Hi, everyone. Today, I have a really special guest with us today. I want to introduce you to my mom, Sue Levine. She was both a professional violinist for many, many years, but she was also my very first violin teacher. So thank you so much for letting me ask you some questions as we kind of explore music and how it brought me here today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe just to start off, you were obviously my very first violin teacher, as well as the teacher for all of my siblings as well. And you started us at a really young age. And I think this was intentional in some capacity. How do you think music and this thing that you started us off on can prepare a young person for a really wide variety of life paths? And how do you think you saw that play out with me?
Those are great questions. Maybe I want to go back to your first comment that we started at a really young age. I taught Suzuki violin, and that was one of the underpinning ideas of the method, that by creating an environment for children at a very young age and also teaching them skills at a very young age that any child could learn to play the violin, and that would be a really beautiful and healthy experience for them as whole beings. We were third of three children, so it was already well in motion by the time you came along, and you like to watch me practice with your sister. And so that was where you got a really early start along with her. We're talking about for a wide variety of life paths. I've seen over the years that employers really like to hire applicants who are musicians for jobs that are not musical at all, because they really have developed, first of all, an ability to work at something regularly over an extended period of time, which not everybody has that experience. And then also because they've learned how to work with other people, how to take instruction, and how to pay attention to really small details. And because the details, as you know in your work, are incredibly, incredibly important.
Absolutely.
The other thing I think that music does is help you develop a growth mindset, by which I'm talking about being process-oriented as well as performance-oriented. The performances are obvious. You've got recitals all the time. But the process of learning is something that really makes a big difference. You know, you had a teacher after me who was incredibly good at chunking things down. He would say, chunk it down and then build it back up. Figure out what is the thing that's not working. Is it a left-hand problem? Is it a right-hand problem? What's the timing? And he would say that most of the piece you learn, it goes really simply. And then there's that piece you have to do 1,000 more times. And then it will go just as well. So your trick is to figure that thing out and solve it. And I think it's that ability that's, really carried over for you into your work as you prepared all the astronauts that have gone up on the first few Dragon flights up to the space station.
It's really, really interesting to kind of think back on that. I think as a kid, I was not always consciously aware of those skills, but even now thinking about how I use so many of those exact things to do the work I do today, it's fascinating. You're so right. Like, we would start with a piece, we'd break it down, we'd look at the building blocks, we'd figure out what within a segment is the most complex, and then focus on that and figure out how to break that down even further. See if it's just 10,000 repetitions or what it is about that passage that is so much harder to master, and why. Definitely applies to, space exploration and how you build a team, how you build a spacecraft, and how you focus on the most complex tasks and how you break those down into really small building blocks. Man, fascinating.
Well, I know your mentor, Joe Tanner, was extremely proud of you as a systems engineer as you graduate. That's kind of your superpower. And I have a feeling it all contributed to that as well, to being able to make sure everybody gets there at the same time together in the right space. Everybody's, you're getting the trains to run on time and everybody's on board, and there's enough sandwiches for them all too, so I think that's something that's contributed for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Similarly, it's the small, both seeing the big picture and how it all comes together, but then being able to break it down across everything into much smaller pieces. So you did obviously start both all of us kids when we were quite young. And I know you mentioned it's kind of part of the Suzuki method philosophy, perhaps, to introduce music at a young age. What about it do you think is so important to start teaching music at a young age? Like, what benefits kids, or kind of what is the heart of that thought process?
Well, Suzuki called it the mother tongue method because he observed that every child learns to talk, and they learn to speak incredibly difficult languages. English is a really difficult language, yet we all learn it. And yet the Japanese children learn Japanese, and so on. So there's a period in the young child's life where they're just sponges, and everything in their environment becomes part of them. Learning to actually play the instrument can wait a little bit longer. We were very enthusiastic in the early days, I think, when you guys were little, about teaching kids at the age of 4 or 3 or even maybe 2, if you had an overly excited teacher. Your brother disabused me of that quickly, but now I think the wisdom is that maybe around 5 or 6 or 7 is a good time to actually start with the instrument. But if you've already been involved in the music classes, then you've developed your ear, you've developed some rhythm, you've developed the ability to do some rhyming, some clapping in time, and some of the basics that you're going to use as a musician that are a little bit harder to get later on. So I think we've evolved in that musical movement as well. But you were right there in the moments where we were working on it early.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also feel as if I never consciously learned those things, if that makes sense. By the time I was aware of it all, like I understood rhythm, and it's so interesting.
Well, you were sitting on my lap while Naomi practiced with me. So, you absolutely absorbed it all. And that was also true of you when you did start to play, because you, sometimes you really wanted to do it and you really got excited about it, and you'd do 2 pieces at once in a week. And other times you had other things you wanted to do. And so it wasn't quite so easy.
Yeah, I guess I can certainly think back on the many varied interests I had over time. And it was certainly not always music. I think much to your chagrin and my other teachers' chagrin at that time. How do you think you were able to balance that? Like music was a huge part of our lives, and we spent a lot of time in youth orchestras and chamber groups and solo lessons and all of these things we did. But that was certainly not all we did. So how did you balance the 2 sides of that?
Well, one trick was that we practiced before school in the morning. And I know it was a little hard to get up early, but then it was done. And you could do whatever you wanted to do. You did a lot of sports. You did volleyball and you did basketball in middle school and high school. I don't think we missed any of your games. And so that was, that we were really interested in you becoming the person you were meant to be. Music was a gift I could give you because of what I did, and it was important to me that if you wanted to be a musician, that you had the best background that you could. It's a competitive field. Kids start early, and it's not easy to make your way. But in fact, I was kind of laughing thinking about this, how you all have violas, you and your sister, because I thought that to myself that if you ever wanted to go into music, if you had a viola and you knew how to play it, you might get some extra gigs, and you probably wouldn't have the money to buy it at that point either. So that I know, much to your chagrin, you have a viola in the closet, but that was the thinking. But it was never that we expected you to be automatically a concert violinist or an orchestral violinist. It was a really good background for you to be whatever you found yourself wanting to be. So I will say you're going to be my student that traveled the farthest.
That's true.
With your music.
Yeah, I certainly never imagined such an unusual combination of things, music and space.
I am curious, what brought you to highlight music education and access to music through this mission?
Funny you should ask that. For me, music was such a part of who I was growing up. I mean, you brought music into our lives and really made it a part of our lives growing up. And I don't even think I fully appreciated the ways in which it gave me certain skills, helped grow my brain, like kind of changed the way I think over time, and helped inform how I approach problems, how I, interact with the world even. And that because of a musical education that you were able to provide for us, being a music teacher that I didn't even know I was benefiting from at the time, if that makes sense. And so have ended up here where I am an engineer, wildly different path, working on really complex problems with the SpaceX team, helping send humans to space. I think it's just really important to show the different things that can come of musical education, and that the skills you gain through music apply universally. You don't have to go and be a professional musician with your career and your life, but it is a really, really important skill set that you can give to a child to help them develop and help create a really strong sense of self and confidence, and give them skills that help them feel emboldened. So I think personally, I have immense gratitude for being able to be multiple things and for it to be just a part of who I am. So often you have someone that identifies as just an engineer or just an artist, and people don't need to isolate those things. They aren't different or separate. You can be a multitude of things, and you can actually maybe bring more to each of those things by having different perspectives and having different skill sets that cross both art and science. So I think hopefully in this curriculum and, bringing a little insight into my background, maybe I can help inspire some young kids that either are currently studying music but end up doing really amazing things in their lives that are totally separate from music, or maybe there are kids that are interested in actually studying music, benefiting from some of that and choose to step into music. But I don't know, hopefully just putting my story out there as something that kids could learn from.
Oh, I'm sure that that's going to be true. I remember you were interviewed once when you were at CU Boulder about women in engineering and what you would advise as a path to prepare for engineering studies. And your answer surprised them because it was more humanities. Do you remember that?
I don't think I remember that interview specifically. I think I can certainly imagine that's what I said. I think it continues to be in my answer, where one of the skills that I use every single day in engineering is actually communication skills of how you work with people, how you talk with people, how you work through hard problems with people, because that's 100% of what we do in this world is we're interfacing and engaging with people to solve difficult problems. And so that's not a technical science skill. That's the ability to speak and work together with people. And I think that's probably a skill set in me that started when we were playing violin and practicing violin. When you are playing in a string quartet, you're having to listen to the three people around you, and you're aware of their movement and their emotion and every single piece of what they are doing, and you're reacting to that and you're responding to that. And I think, frankly, that's like a perfect illustration of how you can grow a communication skill set even through learning music. They're not separate. They're not different. They're just different strategies for, learning and mastering different things that will help you.
Yeah, playing in a string quartet, you are responding 360 to everything. Visual, body, nonverbal, just the breath that somebody is, everybody has to breathe in that same way. So yeah, it's really something there. Yeah. How does music play a role in your life today?
Gosh, I wish it played more of a role, I think is the summary. But I think there will be a time when it does play a bigger role. For now, I work full time as an engineer at SpaceX. So we are doing a lot of hard work. And that's where my brain is focused right now, is on engineering. But certainly around the edges, whenever I can, I will try and, pull out the violin and play. I recently decided I should start learning the guitar. So kind of wherever I can, it comes back up, but it's so intrinsically a part of me that music's not going anywhere. If I ever want to pick up the violin, I can. If I ever want to go play with a string quartet, I can. And I can do so at a very high level, thanks to what the education you gave us over so many years. So I think it's part of everything I do, but it's not something I actively engage with every day.
Well, that was the goal, that you had choices about it. Yeah, absolutely. And, I was just thinking about some of other advantages for kids who study classical music, even if they don't ever intend to be musicians, since they're able to hook up your I don't know what the right word is for it, but when they can see a picture of how your brain is lit up when you're playing the violin or you're playing a musical instrument. It's one of the very few activities that lights up the entire brain, left brain, right brain, big muscle, small muscle, emotional centers. It's all there. It's all lit up. It's fascinating. So it's really helping you to become to integrate yourself in an activity. And it's also true that the kids who study tend to have better grades and better test scores as well, as a corollary, because it just you develop so many skills along the way. So there's plenty of good reasons that you might want to study an instrument other than becoming a musician. So
yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. I'm definitely going to look up, I don't know if it's an MRI image or what it is in that setting, but that's really interesting to hear about.
Yeah, that might be something interesting to include in your curriculum, because it's I thought I was fascinated when I heard about that. How would you connect learning an instrument to a high level to success in your life and career?
It's funny. I try and break down some of the strengths that I have in my role, in my job, and my career. And I think a lot of them are very paralleled by skills you learn in music, frankly. We talked about some of them, the ability to communicate and engage and really connect with people. That's what you do when you play in any musical group, frankly. The ability to learn new things and to break down problems into really small chunks, figure out what the hardest part is and then go focus on that. Those are all skills that deeply benefit me in my job today and help me, navigate the team and work through problems with the team. So I think I certainly will be taking a different look at myself personally and where some of my strengths came from. And I think certainly a number of those tie back to skills that I learned from a very young age through music, which I don't think I had considered before. So that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, we're so proud of you.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And Godspeed.